I have warned endlessly that there would be disturbing consequences from the policies of this government, especially on energy, and that will mean we will not get out of deficit now or tomorrow or next year. You see, there are two deficits. The budget deficit, and of course Chalmers says this year we are in surplus. Then there's the overall government debt, net debt, headed towards $600 billion, 600,000 million. But instead of arresting the debt, the Treasurer has confirmed there'll be 5.5 million households and 1 million small businesses eligible for several $100s in energy bill relief, when it's the government that has created the escalation in energy prices. But then they tell us that people are under the pump, says Chalmers. Well, who has put households and businesses under the pump? Chalmers is boasting his $14.6 billion cost of living package is one of the biggest in the nation's history. When we're in debt and the cost of living crisis and inflation have been created by spending, government spending, not your spending. You've got bugger all to spend. But Chalmers goes on spending. And while Chalmers is boasting about his fake surplus, Australian companies are hitting the wall in transport, construction and hospitality sectors, to name a few. The tax office says pay up or get wound up. So there were 484 administrations and liquidations across the country in February alone. 484 down the drain. 45% up from the same time a year ago and 134% more than in January this year. We've got a housing crisis. Builders are going broke. The tax office is asked after people who can't pay, and job losses follow. In the first half of this financial year, insolvencies rose by 62%. Compared with the previous corresponding period last year. Thousands of them in New South Wales and Victoria, hundreds of them in Queensland, WA and South Australia. Insolvent, can't pay the bills, gone, out the door, jobs with them. And this bloke tonight's talking about a surplus. The hair's on his chest, first surplus in any number of years. And in spite of the rhetoric tonight, welfare spending is rising, productivity growth is almost non-existent, and we've got no buffers for the next crisis. There is more bull dust than budget. So, tell your kids the truth. When your children leave school and hopefully get a job, they'll be carrying this government's debt on their backs. They should be resentful that a Labor government has chosen not to cut back public spending. 80 years ago, Menzies, in his Forgotten People broadcast, spoke about the dispiriting world where government penalises the thrifty, discourages independence, and looks unfavourably on income from savings. Well, here we are. Chalmers wants to tax these very qualities that identified the forgotten people 80 years ago: thrift, independence and saving. There are two weaknesses that characterise government, not just this one. A lack of interest in reducing expenditure because government wants to buy votes, and a lack of guts in facing up to reality. Whatever benefits are available to us come from our resource and energy exports. They are forecast to set a record of $464 billion this year because of surging commodity prices. And you know what Albanese and Bowen want to do about our resources? Leave them in the ground. The Resource Minister, Madeleine King, is closer to the mark than Bowen ever would be, and she talks about the indispensable role that Australia plays as a stable and reliable supplier of energy to the world, except that her very government denies us access to those same energy resources so that we can have cheap power. No one in this government, and certainly no one in the last, has the courage to tell younger workers that they're being left to shoulder rapidly growing tax debts, repaying public debt, and dealing with the cost of unaffordable climate change policies.